They can't be left behind because they're who they are.
It's a car wash with a purpose. The Capper Foundation is a nonprofit in Topeka, working to improve the lives of people with disabilities.
They have to be treated the same way as everyone else.
The organization's auto detail shop, teaching valuable lessons of responsibility and earning a paycheck.
How to dress appropriately, how to communicate with customers, how to interact with one another.
The goal is to give them the skills needed to get a job in the community.
It's make me feel good to see them doing something that they want to do, and they're given a chance to do things that they like to do.
So it may look like a regular car wash, but for these employees, it's a way to make sure they aren't left behind in the workforce.
Even if it's with a disability, we don't want them to be held back. We want them to be as independent as possible.
Not just building their abilities, but empowering them along the way. Reporting in Topeka, covering local news that matters, Kelli Peltier, KSNT News.
Oh, I love this dog so much. I cannot right now.
4 years later, and their love has only grown for Riker, a rescue from a shelter in Topeka.
Riker was at Helping Hands Humane Society. He'd been hit by a car and that he needed an amputation.
Mrs. Sharp's class of then second graders found out the same thing and wanted to help raise the $400 needed for his surgery.
He is the best
dog ever.
So without a second thought, the students took action, asking family, friends, and even dipping into their own piggy banks to raise the money needed.
I love dogs, I love animals, and I don't like seeing animals in pain.
We didn't want him to die, and we got the chance to save something so important.
A new leash on life the family who adopted Riker is forever grateful for. They say the reunion was a full circle moment, getting to watch Riker run and play with the very students who made his recovery possible.
It was emotional. I said, you know, kids, what you did was the most amazing thing. To have this reunion, it almost got me misty-eyed.
And a moment.
There was cheers, there was, some tears even, and he's so near and dear to their heart. He is a special dog to them.
None of them will soon forget.
¿Qué clima hace hoy?
Heidi Martinez Bretado teaches Spanish to kindergartners at Scott Dual Language Magnet in Topeka. Teaching children has been her dream job since she was a little girl growing up in Mexico. She says her mother, who was a teacher as well, was her inspiration.
She took me to work with her, and I remember seeing her, and I just felt so proud that I thought that's where I want to be when I grow up.
Now, 2 years into her teaching career,
Martes.
Bretado is a recipient of the Kansas Horizon Award. She was nominated by leaders in the 501 district for her commitment to teaching her students.
Aquí tienen unas pistas.
Through innovative ideas and lessons that are always changing, especially during the pandemic.
Like right now with these 2 weeks, I took the time to explore new websites. That way we can have more interaction when we're on Zoom again.
And while her lesson plans are filled with ABCs and 1, 2, 3s,
aquí tienen unas pistas.
She hopes being a Kansas Horizon Award recipient will be an even bigger lesson for her students.
Our school is much more than language. We embrace our culture, and hopefully this makes an impact in the future and how they see each other as people.
Reporting in Topeka, Kelli Peltier, KSNT News.
I lost it at that moment, just bawling and crying and wondering why.
For Danielle Pixler, it's been 28 years of wondering why she couldn't have just a little more time with her big sister, Shauna Beth, whose distant memory she holds to tightly.
The couch with her sitting on it, and I see her little round face and her red hair.
A life cut short at just 22 years old, the victim of a gruesome homicide that happened in 1990 in Missouri. With no promising leads as to who the victim was or who was responsible, the case went cold for over 30 years, until now.
9 months ago, I was having nightmares, about somebody screaming and yelling, "Help me." I had no clue.
No clue those dreams may have been about her older sister and an image of what might have happened to her after they lost touch. Danielle, Shauna, and their big brother Robert were separated by foster care when they were little kids, recalling a rough upbringing but a close connection that got them through it all.
We were real close. She was always happy and always full of energy.
The two had been looking for Shauna ever since, but never finding answers until this week, when a DNA swab provided by Danielle matched the profile done by a forensic company for Shauna's remains.
It's like a piece of my heart and my soul been destroyed. Just devastating.
News that shattered the hope Robert had kept alive all these years, that one day the two would be together again.
You know, I never stopped loving her and wanted to introduce her to her nieces and nephews, one of whom is named after her.
Memories, too, of what could have been.
We would have been best friends. We could talk, hang out. We could have done each other's hair. I mean, there's so much we could have done as little girls, you know?
Now tonight, after finally getting closer to the truth of what happened to Shauna, their family is encouraging others dealing with cold cases to never give up and hoping that technology and DNA testing that helped with this case will lead officials to whoever did this.
She's in heaven. We know that, and but at least I know there's closure on knowing that where she is.
Viola Edgeworth is 88 years old and a Chiefs fan through and through.
I'm a Chief forever.
She's beat cancer twice and is now facing stage 4 kidney failure. Her family says throughout all of her health struggles, the Chiefs have always been there to brighten her day.
Her team always seems to spring her back into action. So, you know, just a week ago, she couldn't hardly get out of bed. And this last game got her up and running again.
Like so many other Chiefs fans who've waited 50 years for this moment, Viola says the wait was worth it.
I tell you what, this is the best thing I could ever have, is seeing us in the Super Bowl.
Viola says there's only one outcome for Sunday's game.
What do you mean, if we win, we're gonna win?
And if they can pull it off, Viola's lifelong dream would finally come true.
I just want to see, you know, them make it to the Super Bowl and get that win for her. That's all she's ever wanted. It's all I've ever wanted for her. So.
As for her advice to the team before the big game,
just tell Andy to keep on them. Make them win. For them.
And for Viola. In Topeka, Kelli Peltier, Fox 43 News.
All you do is tie a double knot.
Jess Martin is an anatomy professor at K-State, now adding seamstress to her resume this holiday season for what she's calling the Sewing for Soldiers project. It's a way to help spread some holiday cheer to soldiers fighting overseas.
The ones who are over there who are by themselves, they can't see their family, they can't really spend any time with their friends because of the restrictions.
With these COVID restrictions happening all over the world, Jess says she wanted to help. So she enlisted her friends who know a thing or two about sewing. And together they started working to sew hundreds of homemade stockings, blankets, and face masks with a whole lot of love.
The feeling of joy that it brings is just wonderful.
And a message of gratitude to our heroes during the holidays.
They're not forgotten. We really appreciate what they're doing, the sacrifice they're making, and we just want to make their Christmas a little bit brighter.
Jess is even getting her students involved, encouraging them to make cards for soldiers like her cousin Kevin Fry, who inspired the entire project. He's a captain in the Army currently serving overseas in Germany, with his wife Catherine and their 2-year-old daughter Woodley by his side. A family seeing firsthand the impact the COVID-19 pandemic is having on other soldiers.
And the months have gone by and they still haven't really gotten to see their families back home. A lot of them have to leave their wife, their spouse, and kids in the States. They didn't come to Germany too, so it's been really hard on people.
But Jess says she doesn't want it to stop here. She hopes the Sewing for Soldiers project becomes a year-round thing to make sure our heroes are always feeling loved.
Even though they're 9,000 miles away, we know what they're sacrificing.
A message Jess and her friends are sending, one stitch at a time. In Manhattan, Kelli Peltier, KSNT News.
Lay down. Good boy. Oh, now he thinks he's going to get a treat, so he's going to roll over.
Rolling over isn't all Oscar Munoz can do.
He's just really sweet.
He's a 7-year-old Shih Tzu Lhasa Apso mix, a rescue turned professional.
He's got such a funny little look to him, it's impossible not to smile at him, even if you're having a bad day.
Oscar went through 9 months of training to become a therapy dog by a company called Cares Incorporated in Concordia. The extensive training teaches dogs like Oscar to be calm and obedient in any type of situation and provide comfort to people who need it.
A lot of times they don't even have to talk to me. They just interact with the dog. They get calmed down, they feel better.
He's one of 14 dogs that work in the 501 District's Therapy Dog program.
Are you the best dog? Yeah.
He sure thinks so. Roaming the halls of Topeka High, loving on staff.
Come on. Come on. Good boy. People just love, sitting by him, having him on their lap.
And of course, he doesn't forget the students.
I know a ton of people who routinely get anxiety attacks, especially now. And I know people with therapy dogs, and it helps them a lot.
And now that Oscar's back in business, he'll be busy all over Topeka High, making people's days a little less rough. Covering local news that matters, Kelli Peltier, KSNT News. Getting around for Washburn University senior Deja Coleman isn't always easy.
Sometimes those buttons are really picky.
But she's determined to make it work for herself and others.
I believe that everyone should have access to an education, and as a teacher myself, I will do everything in my power to make sure that everyone has equal and accessible education.
The future educator frequents Carnegie Hall. It's the oldest existing building on Washburn's campus and is only ADA accessible on the first floor, causing simple tasks like going to the library.
I don't have that mobility like some people do.
To become a big challenge. According to Washburn officials, anytime a student with mobility issues is scheduled in a building like Carnegie, the class is moved to a classroom that is ADA accessible.
It is to make sure that every program that we have on campus is accessible, and we want to make the best possible experience for all of our students.
Sometimes to another building, which Deja says can be uncomfortable.
It is very obvious to my peers that we move locations because of me.
Patrick Early, Director of Public Relations, says over the years, Washburn has looked into putting in an elevator for students like Deja to access the upper levels, but it just hasn't been in their budget. Deja's petition isn't asking for changes to be made to Carnegie, though. She's proposing the building for education majors changes entirely to one that accommodates every student.
I'm doing this so that I can make an impact that is better for the rest of the community that continues on even after I graduate.
It gave me an opportunity to do better in life, so I took advantage of that.
Paul Goodman Jr. volunteered for the draft in 1963 at 18 years old. His service to our country took him all over the globe, starting with basic training in Fort Gordon, Georgia, to the Tobyhanna Army Depot in Pennsylvania. Goodman's military career gave him a sense of purpose and opportunities he never thought possible for himself.
The best thing could have happened to me, because if not, I'd have probably been dead or in jail, one of the two. So
he learned a lot in the 2 decades that he served, from being a signalman in the 972nd Signal Battalion, an ammunition man in Germany, to working in the Chemical Corps.
I mean, we done did everything like escorting dangerous weapons and chemical munitions all over the world. Been involved in Operation Red Hat in Okinawa.
His path took him places that today are difficult to remember.
That was, a scary place. It was kind of touch and go there at times,
Paul served tours in Germany and Japan, but vividly recalls his deployment to Vietnam.
I mean, just about every night about 1 o'clock, we were getting mortared in that ammunition dump. And Charlie trying to come through the gate fence and all of his stuff. So it was pretty experiencing over there. A lasting experience. You'll never forget Vietnam.
Goodman retired from the Army in 1984 as a private first class. He went on to have 3 children with his late wife, Ruby, and now has 16 grandchildren. Today, the Vietnam veteran lives in Junction City and loves his job as a school bus driver. He He's proud of his grandson, who's following in Grandpa's footsteps. He's stationed down in Oklahoma right now, going through advanced training for the Army. Covering local news that matters, Kelli Peltier, KSNT News.